Hi, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 6 on information security. If you think back to Chapter 2, when we talked about the different kinds, the different categories of information, this is going to be InfoSec, which is short for information security, which is the protection and the information of security in information systems. InfoSec risk assessment is conducted to determine the level of vulnerability of the information and also the probability of a threat to accessing that information. So there are three major objectives to information security. They are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality is keeping data private and protected, so it's only available to authorized users. Integrity is the organizational process that ensures that information is not damaged, destroyed, or modified when it is taken from storage to transfer. And availability is ensuring that that information is available to all authorized users. There's also OPSEC, which is operations security intended to protect critical information. Critical information is going to be defined as information that if it's accessed by adversaries, it could be that information could be compromised, it could be misused, or it could destroy organizational goals and or the focus of the organization. So in order to protect that information, the value of that information has to be determined. Not all information is created equally. So when you're developing a security plan, that information value must be evaluated. So first, there's absolute value. You have to develop or determine that intrinsic value of an item without comparing it to other items. Conversely, we're going to look at relative value, and that is going to be the subjective value of a piece of information based on its contribution to the entire system. One of the biggest threats to information security is going to be hacking and which are formal technical violations that steal information. There are lots of ways to do this. There's the formal technical ways, and there's also informal non-technical ways. So one of those informal non-technical ways is going to be through social engineering. Social engineering is going to be the psychological manipulation of somebody who works within the organization or the industry to manipulate those people into divulging information. So these are going to be things like corporate espionage. This is usually done in social settings, getting to know people, going to parties, making small talk. Let's have drinks. Let's loosen up. Let's start talking shop. And slowly but surely, you're gaining dribs and drabs of information through people doing just social engagement. An age-old and time-tested method of corporate espionage and government espionage, by the way, is what we call the honeypot. And the honeypot is a romantic relationship. It's presented to a worker. Let's say you have a male worker and we want to steal information from that corporation. We present him with a beautiful woman who shows romantic interest in him. The romantic interest is not real. It is feigned in order to break down barriers, make people vulnerable. Maybe the romantic partner is gathering dribs and drabs through questions, or maybe at some point the romantic partner just compromises that person and says, does the whole like I love you, if you love me, you'll do this for me. I need this information, etc. These are not legitimate romantic relationships, but they are presented to compromise the individual in order to gather information about the corporation, trade secrets, etc. So what are some methods of combating information access? Well, first are going to be technical controls. These are going to be products used to protect the flow of data. So things like firewalls, antivirus software, encryption systems, passwords, session locks. We've all worked with these. There's also cryptographic security, which is secret writing. We write something, we code it into something completely unintelligible so that when the information is transferred, it can't be read. It can't be accessed by outside entities. There's also cybersecurity. So this is going to be computer security networks aimed at the protection of information systems, computers, networks, software, and computer-related information from theft and damage. This is an ever-growing field. This is also a very lucrative field to be working in currently. But there are many methods that are utilized to breach that cybersecurity. So we're going to talk about the 4 steps to an information hack. And the first is information gathering. And this is the part of the hack that's going to probe a computer system looking for vulnerabilities and weak areas in the computer system for air quotes entrance, right? It's not a physical entrance, but it is an entrance into that computer system. The second step is initial access, and that's going to be installing malicious codes to gain entry to the computer system. Once you find that vulnerability, they write a malicious code to gain entry. Number three is then privilege escalation, that once you have gained entry, once you're in the system, the hacker is then going to increase their privilege to obtain that desired information. So once they've actually gotten into the system, they're then going to manipulate where they can have privilege and access to work and access. And finally, the fourth step is to create a backdoor. Hackers create what we call backdoors that allow them to readily gain access to the system again in the future so that they don't have to do the hack all at once. And all of this is usually done unbeknownst to the users in the computer system, that the hackers can come in and go. They can come in and out, and they can come back for more information as time goes by and more information is developed within your organization or your industry. You don't know the backdoors there, and they keep coming back and poaching data. Malicious code attacks are computer codes that are designed to gain that entry into the system in order to steal that information. So when they create that backdoor, they also create those malicious code attacks. Other things that are huge threats, and these are a lot of these you've heard of, a lot of these you've probably experienced to information. So we're going to start with spoofing, and spoofing is trickery just to gain access to a computer. This is done through creating things like phony websites that have malware. The websites look completely legitimate. When you go on it and you access it, it puts malware into your computer, and then it leaves your computer system vulnerable to a hack. Everybody's heard of phishing. I'm sure most people have already been trained on phishing. And this is manipulating or tricking people into providing information like passwords or bank account information. And it's usually done through emails. Typically, they're somewhat easy to spot, although I think they're getting a little bit more sophisticated as time goes by. You can usually spot them because they don't ring true. There's a phony element to them, and they're asking for things that you should never divulge. Although as time goes by and training gets better, a lot of places put out phishing emails to see, do my employees bite on these emails? And I've been fooled by more than a few. There's also something called vishing with a V. So instead of phishing with a PH, it's vishing with a V. You've probably experienced this like already today. It's so common. And this is when they manipulate or trick people into providing information over voice operated phone calls that use a voice internet protocol. I get these all day long where the phone rings. It's a voice that sounds very human, but you can also tell just by the delivery it's not human. It's a computer, and it'll say something like, "This is the IRS, and we have notified you. We're notifying you of a breach in your tax return of 2024. We need the following information." Of course, I never respond to those. I never speak. I never contact them if they leave a phone number. But I'm sure you've been exposed to these, and those are what we call vishing, and people do respond to them, and it's a way of obtaining information. Like social security number, tax information, bank account information, etc. The next is called denial of service. You may have heard of this abbreviated as a DOS attack, and this is where the hacker inundates the victim's computer with overwhelming amounts of fictitious data, and it causes the computer to crash or shut down and become unusable. Once in a while, a virus goes around, and you'll hear, "Hey, everybody, this virus is going around. Don't open, emails that you don't recognize," where it's a DOS. There's also something called a distributed denial of service, or a DDoS attack. And it's the exact same thing as a DOS attack, but instead of attacking one computer or one individual, they're specifically targeting computers that are part of a network. So targeting a computer in an organization, a business, or an industry, and that computer is connected to all other computers in the organization, business, or industry, so that if you become victim of the DDoS, every computer that is in the network that's connected to your computer also becomes a victim of the DDoS, and it shuts everything down. And you can see how this security manipulation can be really disastrous to industry or to corporations, because everything is shut down and then work can't be done. So how do we provide security to computer networks? First, we introduce network segmentation. This is going to be securing and isolating or separating viral network components into subunits. So in the example I just used with the DDoS attack, instead of having every computer on one network, we might have a bunch of sub-networks, so that if there is an attack, the damage is mitigated to a specific number of people in the network rather than the entire industry or the entire organization. We also have choke points, and these are points through which information is funneled so it can be filtered and inspected for malware and other threats, so that before it gets passed on in mass, if there is malware in there, it gets identified and stopped before it goes to everybody. Planned redundancy is another issue, and that is the presence of multiple firewalls to prevent attacks. Let's shift gears here a little bit, although this is highly related to intellectual property and industrial espionage. This is one of the biggest problems that the United States has been facing in the past decade is the theft of intellectual property, both domestically and through foreign governments. Intellectual property is information that is created through research and development. So things like software designs, etc. What these private industries and corporations pay people to do is come up with, innovative, material that is specific to their organization so they can sell it and profit. But when people steal it or get that intellectual property, then that company loses money because now they're not the only player on the street who offers this product. Someone stole your product and they're selling it at a cheaper price. So it's super important to industry organizations, governments, etc., to protect that intellectual property. We try to do it through legal methods and keep people from stealing information and ideas by applying things like copyrights, patent protections, and trademarks. Those things are there, but to apply the letter of the law to those protections is very, very time consuming in the court system. And often by the time the sanction is levied or by the time the case is is completed, the damage has been done, the money's been lost, your information is out there, you can't get it back, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. So this armor doesn't always provide adequate protection. So companies will often rely on trade secrets to protect their private information. And trade secrets are going to be organizational assets of the company property that is not public access information. So this can be ideas, this could be software, knowledge, this could be recipes, client lists, could be formulas, it can be any number of things. And companies have the legal right when it is a trade secret to never disclose this information. It is protected in perpetuity, which that word perpetuity means forever. There is that never expires. Okay. Some trademarks expire, after a certain period of time under the law, but trade secrets never do. But the fact is, this leaves them highly vulnerable and targeted for theft to competitors. And that's where industrial espionage comes in. And industrial espionage is the theft of those trade secrets by individuals and or other companies. It can be incredibly profitable to engage in industrial espionage. If I can find a way to steal the recipe for Coca-Cola and I can sell it, I will become a very rich person, which is why people go and engage in this. There's also economic espionage. And this is when a foreign power is sponsored by a coordinated intelligence activity that is directed at the United States government or at U.S. corporations to unlawfully obtain that proprietary information. And this is one of our greatest threats to U.S. economic and national security. There has been legislation enacted in recent years to increase the penalties for industrial and economic espionage, but unfortunately, this legislation has done little to curb the effects of either.